In this video, we're going to look at UFC Vegas 70. We're going to break down the entire card. I'll give you my predictions, and we'll talk about some betting spots that we like. You can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. We crushed last week. We went 9 for 11 on the picks. William Knight is dead to me, and Josh Parisian, I should have saw that coming. All of our straight bets came through on KunithMMA.com last week. The ones that did us in were the props, like William Knight by knockout, Parisian by decision, and even Zach Pauga inside the distance. The one prop that did work out was Mayra Bueno Silva by submission at plus 175, but the parlays, the straight bets like on Jamal Emmers and Aaron Blanchfield, those all came through, and we were up units for the night. But the DFS guide that we had there for last week's card was absolutely money. Everybody mentioned in the DFS guide did what they needed to do. They either got their win or Lena Landsberg, who we put in our cash game. She scored about 18 points. That's all we needed. Guides like that, data tools, and more can be found at KunithMMA.com, and we'll link that in the comments. But I won't waste another second of your time. Right at the top of the card, we have our main event, Nikita Krylov versus Ryan Spann. So this is Krylov's second act in the UFC. It's been going on since 2018. Mixed results. He's 4-4 since returning, but he's lost to very tough competition. And on the flip side, he's winning against guys that you would expect him to beat. Now, he can do it all. He can strike, he can wrestle, he's got a ton of experience while only being 30 years old. And last time out, we saw him go full Daniel Cormier on Volkan Oezdemir, where he took him down 7 times, controlled him for nearly 10 minutes. So he looked really good there. And in his fight before that, he knocked out Alexander Gustafsson, who admittedly is pretty washed, but he did it in impressive fashion. Now, on the other side, you have Ryan Spann, who's quietly putting together a very strong UFC career so far. He's 7-2 in the promotion, with his only losses coming to Anthony Smith, who was just better than him everywhere that night. No shame in that. Anthony Smith has spent years at the top of the light heavyweight rankings, and he also lost a fight that he was winning against Johnny Walker. He was rocking Johnny Walker multiple times. He was also able to take him down, but ultimately he was shooting for a takedown. Johnny Walker starts landing some elbows, powerful hammer fists, and that's all she wrote. But outside of that, he's looked really solid. And I will say he was a bit questionable against Sam Alvey. That was not a good look. But early on in that fight, he looked real good, and he looked great last time out when he knocked Dominic Reyes out with essentially a jab. I like the tools that Ryan Spann has. I don't like the gas tank. I don't think that he's the kind of guy that could fight a hard 5 rounds, not even a hard 3 rounds, really. But I don't think he's going to have to worry about his gas tank this week because both of these guys are finishers, and I don't see the 3rd round starting in this fight. Not only do both these guys get finishes, but they also leave themselves open to get finished. So the winner of this fight on DraftKings is going to score a ton of points. Exposure to either side if you're running multiple lineups is something I'd recommend. But from a straight betting perspective, I think there's a ton of value on Ryan Spann as the underdog here. I like Spann to win this fight because of the power that he has. We know that Krylov doesn't have great striking defense, and the submission threat from Spann is there, especially when Krylov starts shooting for takedowns. Most of Krylov's losses are coming by submission. Most of Ryan Spann's wins are coming by submission, and he has those long, slender arms. He's able to snatch up guillotines real quick, and that power on the feet opens up a possibility for a club and sub. I like Ryan Spann here. I think that he'll look for takedowns of his own as well. So give me the bigger guy, give me the better grappler, and give me the guy with the better price tag as well. Give me Ryan Spann to win this fight by submission. Next, we're looking at Brenden Allen. He's fighting the gift who keeps on giving, Andre Muniz. If you bet on Andre Muniz every time he fought on Contender Series or every time he's fought in the UFC, you would have won every time. He has quite possibly the best jiu-jitsu in the middleweight division, and what I like most about him is that he doesn't pretend to be something that he's not. He doesn't stand and trade with anyone. He gets his opponents down, he finds the back, he looks for chokes or arm bars. It's just what he does. And when he looks like he's too high on the back and he's going to get shucked off, he takes the arm with him. Crazy stuff.
Oh, I'll get that up.
And on the other side, we have Brenden Allen, who I'm still not sold on. He's coming off a 1st round finish over Jotko, which is impressive. I'll definitely give him that. But before that, he wins a decision in a fight that he lost to Jacob Malkoun. He was taken down every round in that fight. 7 takedowns total, gave up some really bad positions as well on the ground. If he does that against Muniz, he's finished. Before that, he gets a club and sub win over the ghost of Sam Alvey. And before that, he got knocked out by the action man Chris Curtis, which really no shame in that. He has some good wins. He has a win over Kevin Holland, a good win over Kyle Dawkins, that good win over Krzysztof Jotko, but I'm still not convinced. I think that Brenden Allen has some serious holes holes in his game when it comes to his striking defense, when it comes to his takedown defense, and when it comes to his grappling. And these are holes that I think Andre Muniz is going to be able to capitalize on, and I see him doing it early. I could see Muniz getting to the clinch, working Ailin up against the fence, creeping to his back, getting the hooks in, and finding a rear naked choke. I think Ailin could have success if he was able to keep this fight on the feet, if he was able to keep it in striking range, but even Uriah Hall struggled to do that. And from a grappling standpoint, even Jacare couldn't stop Muniz from snapping his arm in round 1. So the pick for me in this fight is going to be Andre Muniz by submission. Next, we're looking at a heavyweight fight between Augusto Sakai and Don'Tale Mayes, and this fight is basically a pick'em right now from an odds perspective, and that makes sense. On one side, you have Sakai, who's riding a 4-fight losing streak, getting finished in all 4 of those losses. Not a good look. And on the other side, you have Don'Tale Mayes, who has horribly low fight IQ. Like, watching Don'Tale Mayes fight is like watching 6-year-olds play soccer. They're out there, but they don't really know what's going on. When you see Don'Tale Mayes close distance, he's doing it with his chin way up in the air. He's also off balance. You see him trying to throw step-in knees, but he's all off balance. He looks strange. And he doesn't respond well to being hit. Now, he is big. He's 6'6", huge for the division, huge just in general. He's got long arms, but he almost looks like he doesn't know how to fully use all of these tools just yet. Sakai, on the other hand, does know how to use his tools. He throws punches and combinations with fluidity, pace, consistency. But my issue with Sakai is he's taken a lot of damage recently, and the man just can't grapple. He doesn't have any wins by way of submission, and he has piss poor takedown defense. So both these guys have traits that make me want to stay away, and I really wish we had a better line on one of them as the underdog. But at the time of recording this, we are getting slight dog money on Mayes here, which is a relief because I wouldn't want to touch him if he was the favorite, but at plus money, I like it. I think he does win this fight. I think he wins it with his grappling. We've seen him wrestle effectively in the past, and we have to remember he's been fighting as a pro since 2016. It's not a crazy amount of time, so it's safe to say that he's still learning, only being 13 fights into his professional career, getting better. Plus, he's training with John Jones. He's sharing the octagon with John Jones. You got to be getting better if that's the case. So I expect him to have a solid wrestling-heavy game plan coming into this, and I see him winning this fight inside the distance with ground and pound, likely from the crucifix position or in full mount. So the pick for me in this fight is going to be Don'Tale Mayes by TKO. You don't want me to bet on Don'Tale Mayes? Oscar, why don't you want me to bet on Don'Tale Mayes? Because friends don't let friends bet on Don'Tale Mayes? Well, that's a relief because we're not friends. Next, we're looking at the long-awaited return of Tatiana Suarez. She's fighting Montana De La Rosa this week. This is easy. We don't need to do too much here. This is easier than Mayra Bueno Silva by submission last week. Now, some of you might be newer UFC fans and not know who Tatiana Suarez is, and the easiest way that I could put this is American female version of Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Send me location.
She very well could be the best wrestler in the division and very possibly the best overall grappler in all of women's MMA. We just saw Erin Blanchfield handle her business last week by shocking a lot of us first with the hands, but then doing what we thought she would do, leaning on that grappling and finding a finish. And I say that to say this, Tatiana Suarez is a better grappler than Erin Blanchfield. She's going to run through Montana De La Rosa this week. Montana's a grappler of her own, but she's going to struggle to get anything going against Suarez this week. Her only path to victory is coming up with a submission off of her back. Other than that, I don't see her being able to stop Suarez from taking her down, and I don't expect her to be able to get into a dominant position of her own. And when you have these strong grapplers, getting them with something like an armbar from guard or a triangle from guard or a guillotine, these are things that just don't happen with really, really strong grapplers, and I don't see that happening in Tatiana Suarez, especially this week. I'm happy that she's returning. I'm excited to see her inject some more life into the division. This is complete one-way traffic this week. Suarez wins this fight. I expect her to finish. The pick for me in this fight is going to be Tatiana Suarez inside the distance. And real quick, I'll just pull it back up from a fantasy perspective, and obviously we talk a lot more about this stuff in the final picks video, but these are Khamzat Chimaev numbers. She's averaging 120 DraftKings points. We're looking at a sample size of 5 fights. She is pricey coming in at 9,600, but for cash games, she's a stone cold lock, and for tournaments, you probably need her as well. Next, we're looking at a fight that for sure doesn't go the distance, an absolute banger. On DraftKings, you're probably going to need both sides if you're running multiple lineups. We got Mike Malott taking on Yohan Lainesse this week. 2 Canadians going at it like you're watching an NHL game. For Mike Malott, very talented. What I really like out of him, though, is the hand speed. We saw that against Mickey Gall. He was throwing 2-punch combinations every time Mickey Gall was closing distance, and it was lightning fast. He also has more tools to win this fight as well, considering how good he is on the mat. On the other side, you have Yohan Lainesse, who has that crushing one-shot knockout power, and that was really on display play before he came to the UFC. We saw it somewhat in his debut against Gabe Green, and he scored 40 DraftKings points in that fight, but he also scored 40 last time out in a decision win. He was uber disappointing last time out against Darian Weeks, landing only 23 significant strikes. He gave us that William Knight special, and somehow the judges still thought that he won the fight. If he shows up low output like that this week, Mike Malott's going to touch him up and he's going to knock him out. But on the flip side, if he comes out the way that he did in his UFC debut, he's probably going to knock Mike Malott out. And I say that because Mickey Gall busted Malott up and he only landed 13 strikes. In that fight, Malott was backing up the entire time and he found the knockout punch when Gall overextended, but Mickey Gall is not a great striker. He was also headhunting. He only threw one strike that wasn't to the head. But it leads me to believe that a better striker might give Mike Malott problems, and Yohan Lainesse mixes it up well to the body, upstairs, and he's got more power than Mickey Gall. I think the best way to approach this fight is taking the under, considering the way that these two guys throw down. But I'm looking at another underdog opportunity here in Yohan Lainesse. With Yohan Lainesse. And again, when you go back and watch the Mickey Gall-Mike Malott fight, you can't help but think if Mickey Gall doesn't overextend and get caught, he might win that fight. I don't love that for Mike Malott, and I think a lot of people are going to be down on Yohan Lainesse given his last performance. This might be a sneaky buy low spot. Again, I don't think it goes the full 15 minutes either way, but the pick for me in this fight is going to be the underdog Yohan Lainesse by knockout. Real quick before we go on, if you don't mind, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, comment something for the algorithm, really anything. You know how the algorithm works. Next is a fight that I'm going back and forth on personally, and that's Trevor Peek and Erick Gonzalez. Now, I told you on Twitter, take Trevor Peek now before the line moves, and the line has moved, so you're losing value by the day, it seems, on Trevor Peek, but I don't know. Knee-jerk reaction is that he knocks the Ghost Pepper out this week. Erick Gonzalez got slept by Jim Miller. Terrence McKinney ran through him, and I'm not certain that he's UFC caliber, or at least won't be in the UFC for that long. And now he's getting matched up with Trevor Peek, who's an undefeated prospect with all of his wins coming by way of knockout. He is as aggressive as the geese that walk around here in Buffalo. He's as aggressive as a fighter can be, and maybe too aggressive. I say that because he comes forward throwing everything into his punches, and it looks like he's aiming for power rather than technique. Like if you go back and watch his fight on Contender Series, hooks, wide kicks, he's throwing big knees, he's throwing big uppercuts to the body when he's in the clinch, but he also kind of leaves himself exposed where he's just throwing like this. He ultimately breaks Malik Lewis and is able to get him out of there, but Malik Lewis, only 5 fights on his Contender Series debut, 26 years old, not a great spot. And if you look at Peek's fight before that against Kama Worthy, he has me all types of scared this week. But Kama Worthy was having a little bit of success in spots in that fight, and if you look around the 3-minute mark, it looks like Peek is gassed. He looked slower, his output started to regress a little bit, and his defense, just like in his Contender Series fight, was nowhere to be found. Trevor Peek's striking defense looks like my Philadelphia Eagles defense second half of the Super Bowl. And because of that, I think there's a good chance that Erick Gonzalez can put hands on him. Erick Gonzalez dropped Jim Miller. You're not going to see that on the stats, but he did drop him. He was also able to take Jim Miller down, so he had success against a veteran in a spot where he was making his debut. That's a tough fight. On top of that, he's got 3 times the fight experience and way more fight time than Trevor Peek. He's got 2 UFC fights under his belt. He's already got UFC losses under his belt, so he's not worried about protecting some perfect record. He's fought better competition as well. To me, this is looking a lot like Jamal Emmers last week, and let me tell you something real quick about that. If you played Hussein Askabov after I told you what would happen, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. But this fight for sure doesn't go the distance. One of these guys is getting knocked out, and I'm torn on both sides. I like the explosion early from Peek, and I like the experience from Gonzalez. I still am going to take Trevor Peek, and I don't think I'll change on that throughout the week. I've already put some money on him, but man, oh man, is he sus. This is by far the most winnable fight Erick Gonzalez has gotten in the UFC, but I do think that Trevor Peek wins, and I think he wins this fight by knockout. For our next fight, take the over. We have Gabriella Fernandes fighting Jasmine Jasudavicius this week, or Jasudavicius, I don't care.
Don't care. Don't care. Still don't care.
This fight very likely goes the distance, and I could see rounds being very close, very competitive. Jasmine Jasudavicius lost as a -250 favorite last time out when Natalia Silva styled on her for all 3 rounds. We sniffed that out. We knew that a win over Kay Hansen don't mean nothing. We were able to see Jasmine Jasudavicius for exactly who she is in the octagon. She also lost to Elise Reed, which continues to age like milk. On the other side, we have Gabby Fernandes, who's making her UFC debut. She's 8-0. She's a champion over at LFA USFA, and now she's taking that next step, and she hasn't faced the highest level of competition up until this point, so this is going to be a good test for us to see where she's at. If Jasudavicius can't get the takedowns though, she probably falls behind in the striking and loses a decision. What I see from Gabby on tape is that she looks strong in there. She throws really good kicks with her back leg from that southpaw stance. They're coming to the legs, they're coming to the body, they're coming up high. I could see those body kicks chewing up Jasmine and making her hesitant enough for Fernandes to let her hands go. From a straight betting perspective, I like the line. I think the UFC debutante comes away with the win here. I wouldn't recommend this spot for DraftKings, but from a straight betting perspective, I do like Gabby, and if you wanted to take her by decision, I think that makes a ton of sense. We did get kind of burned with props, and I might be staying away from that, but the pick for me in this fight is going to be Gabby Fernandes by decision. Next, we have a fight with Jordan Leavitt. The Monkey King is back. He's fighting Victor Martinez this week. We see Jordan Leavitt for the first time since dropping his last one to Paddy Pimblett. We know Jordan Leavitt by now. We know what he is. Strong grappler, terrible striker, rump shaker. When he gets his hands on guys, he's like Velcro. Last time out, he was having success against Paddy, but Paddy was just a step ahead in terms of creativity and urgency when it came to the grappling and getting from one position to the next. But regardless of the result, I think that's a positive experience for Leavitt. Only his second loss ever, and I think we see him bouncing back this week because Vic the Brick Martinez is making his debut, and it's a tough matchup. I say that because Martinez is a knockout artist. Jordan Leavitt's not great on the feet, so he's going to want to let his hands go, but Jordan Leavitt has a great chin, so he's not afraid to take a shot to find his entries for takedowns or just the clinch. So if Jordan Leavitt's able to close distance and get to his positions, get this guy in the ground, I could see him riding out position or finding a submission, say in the second or third round. Very frustrating spot if you're Vic Martinez this week, and I don't think he knows it yet, but I think we're going to see a very frustrated debutante in there when Jordan Leavitt's just riding his back and they're midway through the second round and he hasn't been able to get anything going. So give me the excellent chin, give me the stick-to-itiveness when it comes to the grappling, give me the creativity on the ground, give me Jordan Leavitt this week, give me Jordan Leavitt by decision. Next we have a fight with Charles Johnson. He's fighting Ode Osbourne this week. It's hard not to like Charles Johnson in this spot. At first it was hard to get a read on Charles Johnson after what he looked like against Muhammad Mokaev. He did a good job of surviving, but he didn't get any offense off of his own. He follows that up with a gritty performance over Zhalgas Zhumagulov. Questionable decision, yes, but he just decided to turn it on late when it seemed like he was better everywhere and probably could have poured it on early and won sooner. And even if he didn't win sooner, he would have won more convincingly, but then you see him follow that up with a performance against Jimmy Flick where he smoked Jimmy Flick. He looked good doing it. He scored 114 DraftKings points, and I think he'll look good this week against Ode Osbourne as well. Ode Osbourne is a kill or be killed kind of guy. He prefers to strike, long, athletic for the division. This should be a fun fight for as long as it lasts, but when you look at some of the guys that Ode Osbourne has lost to, like Tyson Nam getting knocked out in the first round, I don't love that. He beat Zaruk Adeshev, but Zaruk Adeshev had no business being in the UFC octagon. He beat CJ Vergara in a fight that I think could have went either way from a judging perspective. He didn't look great. Flying knee knockout by Manel Kopp, and he beat Jerome Rivera, who might be worse than Zaruk Adeshev. And he made his debut and got guillotined right away by Boom Kelleher. When you look at this list, outside of maybe Manel Kopp, Charles Johnson's better than all these guys. Charles Johnson has better hands than all these guys. He has as much power as everybody except maybe Manel Kopp on this list. He's going to be able to match up well physically against Ode Osbourne, and he's got some momentum. This looks to me like a fight where you should probably take the under. Most of Ode Osbourne's fights are finishing really, really early. And again, he's a kill or be killed kind of guy. I don't necessarily think that he has a great chin, or maybe he did have a great chin, but now there's some miles on that. After getting knocked out by Tyson Nam, after getting flying kneed by Manel Kopp, he's got some miles on that chin for sure. I think that Charles Johnson wins. I think Charles Johnson is a good parlay piece for you as well because the odds aren't crazy. He's not a minus 400 favorite. I think I got him at like minus 190. Again, you could find our official bets at kunithmma.com as well as DFS research tools throughout the week. It's a place where you can customize your own profile as well. You can DM me, you can DM other people, you can post on the big forum, have open conversations about betting spots, or really anything that you'd like. Again, that will be linked in a pinned comment for this fight for me. I do like Charles Johnson to win inside the distance. For this next fight, I am excited about it. It's the UFC debut of the Tajik Eagle, aka Habib Jr., aka Nurullo Aliev. He's fighting Rafael Alves this week, and I expect him to get it done. If you haven't seen this guy fight, it is Khabib-esque. He's aggressive on the feet, he's always moving forward, he gets his takedowns early, gets them often, and he lands vicious ground and pound. Strong top control, he's going to stick to you. He's an Eagle FC champion. He does the Eagle name proud for sure. Right now, he's doing more for the Eagles name than the Eagles defense did in the Super Bowl. Anyway, on the other side, we have Rafael Alves, who is honestly very solid and very talented. but doesn't make great decisions. He doesn't have a good gas tank, but he doesn't really fight like he knows he has a bad gas tank. He doesn't have good fight IQ. If you have 11 losses, you for sure don't have good fight IQ. And I think he's really going to struggle with the pace that Aliev puts on him. I think he's going to have a hard time getting back up when Aliev gets his takedowns. And I think he's really up against it this week. Now, what we always talk about with Rafael Alves fights is the pop in his shots. The dude can bang. And we also remember how quick he slapped on that guillotine against Mark Diakese. But outside of that, I don't think that he's going to be able to do well outside of the first round because Aliev's going to make him work. He's going to take him down. He's going to keep him there. And I think that he loses a decision this week. If you were to want to take a flyer on this, Rafael Alves inside the distance could make sense. He's a fun guy to have in the UFC, but I don't think he has the tools or the cardio or the fight IQ to be able to fight at that upper echelon. And I think Aliev could be the real deal. So give me the Tajik Eagle to win this week. And I think that he wins by decision. Next, we have a fight that probably goes over. We have the UFC debut of Hailey Cowan. She won a split decision on Dana White's Contender Series. Looked ends up getting a contract anyway, and now she's fighting Ailin Perez. Hailey Cowan's okay on the feet, but really she makes her money by getting fighters to the ground. That grappling, that forward pressure, that wrestling, that's her bread and butter. But that can sometimes get her in trouble. Her most recent loss is a guillotine loss to a woman who was 2-2. You heard that right. She was 1-2 before that guillotine win of hers. So not a great look for Hailey Cowan, and not a great look when she's making her UFC debut. On the other side, Ailin Perez, she's fighting for the second time in the UFC. This will be the third time that she's making weight for the UFC, and I expect her to look a lot better than she looked against Stephanie Egger. I think Stephanie Egger chokes out Hailey Cowan pretty early, and she kind of did the same thing against Perez. If Perez was able to hold on for just a few more seconds, she would have escaped the round, and I think she would have had some success. She wasn't able to stop Stephanie Egger's grappling, and I kind of give her a pass because Stephanie Egger is pretty solid. UFC debut, live crowd, biggest crowd she's ever fought in. I think this was the fight in Paris. I think she has a much better matchup this week. I don't think that Hailey Cowan's all that good. She could prove us wrong, but I think that Ailin Perez wins this fight. I think she's also the more dangerous of the two. I think she's got better hands on the feet, and I think she's going to be able to throw up some submissions or at least reverse position if she does get put on her back. I think it'll be a close fight. I think it'll be competitive. I think it goes to distance, but the pick for me in this fight is going to be Ailin Perez by decision. Next, we're looking at a fight with Garrett Armfield. He's welcoming Jose Johnson to the UFC. Garrett Armfield is the sneaky favorite this week because it seems like the world is on Jose Johnson, and I could understand why. Jose Johnson is a giant bantamweight, absolutely giant, standing at 6 feet tall. He's the much better striker. Garrett Armfield didn't really show us all that much against David Onama in his UFC debut, albeit up a weight class and on short notice. But Garrett Armfield, I am almost certain, is going to be the stronger fighter physically here. He's going to be the better grappler, the more willing grappler, and if Jose Johnson lets him get his grappling going, he's probably going to lose. Jose Johnson has been submitted in the past multiple times, and I think that if Garrett Armfield's able to get top position, start raining down some ground and pound, Johnson's going to have to give him his back. Gets the hooks in, he gets the rear naked choke, Garrett Armfield wins. You don't see tall bantamweights really working out all that often. Sean O'Malley's like an anomaly, but I think a lot more guys are closer to Kevin Croom than they are Sean O'Malley. And if Jose Johnson is in the middle or closer to Kevin Croom than he is to O'Malley, he probably gets taken down and beat up by Garrett Armfield this week in another buy low spot for a guy who's coming off a disappointing performance. Now, no one expected him to win. Everybody loves David Onama, right? David Onama's pretty damn good, but Garrett Armfield didn't give us anything that we could write home about. However, I do think that he bounces back here in a big way in his true weight class, and I think that he gets the win inside the distance, either with TKO from a dominant position on the ground or with a submission. And then lastly, I mean, this is an easy one. We don't really need to spend too much time here. Joe Solecki, the biggest or one of the biggest favorites on the card outside of Tatiana Suarez. He is fighting Carl Deaton III. I believe Carl Deaton's taken this fight on a week or less than 2 weeks notice. He's making his UFC debut and he's going to get grappled to death. Joe Solecki is a monster on the mat. Just look at the control time on these fights in the UFC. Nearly 6 minutes, over 6 minutes, nearly 9.5 minutes, 3.5 minutes, 12.5 minutes. He's getting takedowns at all of his fights except when he was able to get a submission over Austin Hubbard in the first round. Joe Solecki looks like a great play this week when you're playing cash, if you're able to afford him and Tatiana Suarez, which might be kind of difficult, but when we build lineups later in the week in the final picks video, we'll figure it out. But big step up in competition for Carl Deaton III, not the kind of guy that you want to make your debut against, somebody who's going to get you to the ground and not let you up and just stick to you from round round 1 all the way through to round 3. I think that he probably finds a submission here. I think that he wins inside maybe the first or second round. Give me Joe Solecki this week by submission. If you've made it to this point, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. You know how the algorithm works, and I'll see you later in the week.